Hello, Greyhounds! In addition to being adorable and wholesome entertainment, Ted Lasso is also a treasure trove of pop culture references. I'm always looking at what people are reading, if only to congratulate myself that I'm reading something better. So naturally, I was invested in what everyone's favorite bearded coach has been reading throughout 3 seasons. And he has been reading a lot of books. Here are all the books I've managed to discern throughout 3 seasons, along with their Goodreads rating. Most of them I haven't read, and some of them I'm definitely adding to my reading list. Maybe you'll get some ideas too. Let's have a look! In the very first episode on the plane to London, Coach Beard is shown reading not 1, not 2, but 3 books. They're all books about football, as we have to remember that both he and Coach Lasso are American football coaches and have no experience of normal football, or what they would call soccer. Hence, Coach Beard is reading Coaching Soccer for Dummies, which gets 3.6 stars in Goodreads, and appears to be a guide for being a kids volunteer coach. I guess you have to start somewhere. He's also reading Inverting the Pyramid, The History of Football Tactics, which gets 4.15 stars on Goodreads and actually looks pretty terrific, and which I have now added to my list. The last book is harder to make out, but he does read it throughout the season, and it is A Quiet Genius about Bob Paisley, who is described in the jacket as the quiet genius in a flat cap, and who is apparently regarded as one of the greatest managers of all time. So definitely good reading material for a coach. In episode 3, Coach Beard is still reading A Quiet Genius, while Coach Lasso gives the players a bunch of books. Stick around to the end of the video for a list of those we can see. In episode 6, we get a glimpse of what appears to be a very old and tattered football manual, and while we don't see the front page, we see a bit of the spine, which allows us to investigate. And I think this is Soccer Techniques and Tactics. And if we search for that in Goodreads, we get several hits, none of which seem promising to begin with. But if we click into the first one, it looks like we may have a winner. It's called the Arco Book of Soccer Techniques and Tactics by Richard Widdows. It's from 1983. And if you want to, you can read it online for free at the Internet Archive. It's still on the coach's desk in episode 10. And then we don't see Coach Beard read another book until season 2. In episode 1, we see Coach Beard reading a book called The Greatest: What Sport Teaches Us About Achieving Success. It is apparently a collection of articles by Matthew Seed, who is a writer, journalist, and former table tennis champion. He has written a couple of bestsellers that are more famous and better rated on Goodreads. I haven't read any of them, but they all look quite interesting. In episode 5, we get another challenge. We can very clearly see that Coach Beard is reading a Nick Hornby book, but the title is not visible. I have read quite a few of Nick Hornby books, and I know that he had his start with a book called Fever Pitch, about football fandom, and specifically his obsessive love of Arsenal. So that would have been my first choice, and after some messing about it with editions on Goodreads, I think that we can all agree that this was indeed what Coach Beard was reading. The book is non-fiction, is almost a memoir, and it's a very interesting read, which I would definitely recommend, even if you're not interested in football or Arsenal, which I am. And it has actually been turned to a film twice, a British one with Colin Firth, and an American one about baseball with Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon. I've seen the American version, and it is also cute. Yes, even if you're not interested in baseball and the Boston Red Sox, which I am not. Now, moving on to episode 6 of season 2, Coach Beard is seen reading Football Against the Enemy by journalist Simon Cooper. The book is well rated and won the William Hill Sports Book Award in the year 1994, an award which incidentally has been won by Fever Pitch as well, so maybe that's where Coach Beard gets his inspiration from. Simon Cooper has also written Chums, which if you're interested in modern British politics, you should definitely read. It's brief and easy to read and quite illuminating. In episode 7 of season 2, Coach Beard is seen reading About a Boy, another Nick Hornby book, which makes sense. He liked Fever Pitch and moved on to Nick Hornby's fiction. About a Boy, which is a pretty decent read, is probably one of Nick Hornby's most famous ones, and another one that has been turned to a film. This one with quintessential English lead of the 90s and currently everyone's favorite curmudgeon, Hugh Grant, as well as a very young Nicholas Hoult. My favorite Nick Hornby book, while we're on the subject, is High Fidelity, about a record store owner, and yes, you've guessed it, it has been turned to a film. Americanized with Joan Cusack and breakout star Jack Black, and more recently into a very cute, overlooked TV series with improbably cool Zoe Kravitz and breakout star Divine Joy Randolph. Nick Hornby is definitely doing well with adaptations. Anyway, back to Ted Lasso. In episode 9 of season 2, we get a glimpse of Coach Beard's bookcase, and it looks like he has collected quite a few books for someone that has been in the country for like a year and a half. So well done, Coach Beard. I can't really make out any of the books, unfortunately. It's quite dark in his flat. If anyone recognizes any of the spines, let me know. Otherwise, we do get confirmations of all the books that he has been reading in season 2, as they are all on his desk. In episode 10 of season 2, we see the back of a book on Coach's desk, but we don't see the title, and infuriatingly, we see the same open book without a clear view of the title in episode 11. In that episode, we also see Coach reading Untitled Chapter, a bestseller that discusses mushrooms, and was written by noted mycologist Marilyn Sheldrake. It made several end-of-year book lists when it was published in 2020. In the last episode of the season, Coach Beard is still studying Inverting the Pyramid. You'd have thought he would have internalized it by now. We get another view of all the books he has been reading, and again, tantalizingly, we see the book with the yellow-red spine. It is even harder to make out what it is. We also get this still from the halftime of their final match, which is truly a work of art. No books there, but I just like to look at that photograph. With that match, they managed to get promoted to the Premier League yet again, which sets us up nicely for season 3. And just in the first episode of that season, we finally see that yellow-red book that Coach Beard has been reading. It is The Miracle of Castel di Sangro, a very well-rated book by American journalist Joe McGinnis, who has written various true crime books among other things. In episode 3, Coach Beard is back reading Inverting the Pyramid, possibly trying to find a way to accommodate in the team new signing Zava. In episode 4, there's a book with a red jacket on his desk, which I can't really make out at first, but a look from a different angle reveals a bit more info as Coach Beard gets up to leave, and see that he's reading The Beckham Experiment, which discusses David Beckham's decision to join the American Soccer League team, LA Galaxy. The book was written in 2009, and given how well Beckham is doing at the States at the moment, I'm guessing it was a good decision. On a sadder note, the author of the book, Grant Wall, died from an aortic aneurysm while reporting for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. He seems to have been a nice guy. In episode 5 of season 3, Coach Beard is still reading the Pyramid book. I'm convinced by now to read it. Then we get the pretty awesome episode in Amsterdam where everyone is too busy having cool adventures to be reading books, and that leads us to episode 7, where the coaching team starts to implement the total football method that Ted dreamt about in Amsterdam. In that episode, we see at least 3 new books, and at this stage we can only make out one. Namely Friend of the Devil by James Kirkland. This looks like a bit of a niche book. I wonder if someone from the production team liked it and wanted to give it some love. It's about how former NBA basketball legend Bill Walton and TV presenter Dave Pasch solve a mystery. These are real people, by the way. Pretty sure they're not a crime-solving duo. That sounds interesting if nothing else. Now, there are also a green book and an orange book on that desk, but they're not visible just yet. The orange book remains tantalizingly obscured in most of the shot. In episode 8, we see the orange book one more time, and this time, with sleuthing and some luck, we can just about read what it says. Something about neurotic genius? This, in fact, Brilliant Orange, the neurotic genius of Dutch football. Of course, it makes sense that Coach Beard is reading about Dutch football, since the team now has embraced the total football philosophy. It was written by writer-journalist David Winner, and it was shortlisted for a William Hill Sportsbook Award in 2000. In episode 10, we finally see the green book Coach Beard has been reading. It is called Finding the Mother Tree, Discovering the Wisdom of the Forest by Suzanne Simard, a forestry scientist and ecologist who has done research on underground networks of forests. Actually sounds pretty cool. Seems like a natural progression from the mushroom book Coach was reading earlier in the season. Sign me up. Coach must have had a lot of downtime as he's reading another book in episode 10 called The Club, How the Premier League Became the Richest, Most Disruptive Business in the World. It traces the growth of the English Premier League from its inception to the time of writing. That looks like it's right up my alley. I'm also adding it to my list. No new books in episode 11, just a couple of the old ones. In the final episode, we see one last book being read by Coach Beard. It is called Impermanence, and the consensus on the internet is that it is not a real book, but rather a comment on the ending of the season. Brenton Hunt, aka Coach Beard, has said in an interview with Awards Radar that the 3 words that described the season were football, catharsis, and impermanence. So there you go, that's the last book that Coach Beard reads on screen. I have added the full list in the description below. I hope it gave you some good ideas about what to read next. My reading list before the show was 553 books, so clearly I didn't need more reading ideas, but nonetheless, I have added some more. The way I see it, if I read 25 books a year, it will take me less than 25 years to finish the backlog, which is pretty doable. Before you go, here's some bonus books that people other than Coach Beard have been reading on the show. Ted is seen around a few books through the seasons. In the first episode, he's reading the classic Dharma Bombs by Jack Kerouac, whom you probably know from On the Road. In episode 10, we see the coaching team strategizing in Coach Ted's flat, and we see that Ted has been reading The Ultimate Cockney Geezer's Guide to Rhyming Slang by Jeff Dibbles, and I have zero interest in Cockney Geezer's rhyming slang to look any further into this, but I can see why Ted Lasso would like it. In season 3, he is reading to his son, Marcus Rashford's Breakfast Club Adventures. For anyone not knowing him, Marcus Rashford is a top-notch football player and a top-notch human being. And in the final episode, Coach Lasso is reading Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, the New Science of Psychedelics. I'm guessing he was inspired to read more on psychedelics after that hallucination he had in Amsterdam, when Coach Beard had given him some magic mushroom tea, which actually turned out not to be a good batch, but still got Ted high somehow. It's not just the coaches reading books, however. In episode 3 of season 1, Ted gives the players some books that are specifically chosen to give them a message. The players react in the same way that my nephew reacted when I gave him books for Christmas, when he said, "I don't like books." You should have given them some Fortnite credits instead, Ted. As should have I. Anyway, we see A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle, a AI science fantasy book that has been very successful and has been turned to a TV film with opera. This was given originally to Roy Kent. He represents the little girl that is the protagonist of the book, and he later reads it to his niece, the fan favorite Phoebe. At least is my favorite. In season 2, we also see Sam reading the book while doing some cardio. I gotta say, the book has some top-notch artwork in previous editions. Sam gets another AI book, Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game, which Wikipedia tells me falls under military science fiction. I have seen the film adaptation of the same name, and I wasn't particularly impressed, but that doesn't really mean anything for the book. Not everyone gets AI books, though. Jamie Tart, arguably the most juvenile of all main characters, gets a grown-up book, The Beautiful and Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I've read The Great Gatsby and Tender is the Night by Fitzgerald, which are both classics, but not this one. The book summary talks about how this is a devastating look at the ruinous effects of wild ambition. I guess Jamie was a bit of a prick at that stage. There's also this book that's very briefly on screen and that this nameless football player gets. For all my screen-grabbing abilities, I cannot tell what it is. Does anyone recognize it? And we see some other people reading books. For example, in season 2, Roy Kent, fresh into his retirement and at least 20 years after the book became a colossal bestseller and gave us a blockbuster where Tom Hanks had a regrettable hairstyle, is reading The Da Vinci Code. In season 3, Jade, Nate's girlfriend, is reading Murakami's Kafka on the Shore, another big bestseller. I found this book supremely annoying. It started pretty good and had great atmosphere, but soon descended into pure nonsense. So you're not getting a recommendation from me on that one. And I think that's it. That's a lot of books for 3 seasons. Hopefully there will be some more in the upcoming 4th one that will be about a women's football team, and for which I cannot wait. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful and entertaining. Let me know if I've missed something or if you disagree with any of my recommendations.
I won't take it out, but I'm more than happy to tell you where you're wrong.
If you liked, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Bye bye.